Hello and welcome to lecture number 20 in our course Project Stakeholder Management. And in this lecture I'm going to continue with the attributes of the project stakeholders, specifically with regards to their attitudes, why they support projects, why do they oppose projects. We had already looked at some ideas, some concepts behind this in the previous class. And in this class we are going to look at it in a little bit more detail with some examples. What makes projects stakeholders supportive and adversarial? Well, I have conducted my own research to answer this question, and I have looked at actually a few hundred projects from around the world. Based on the information I have come up with this listing of reasons why project stakeholders sometimes support projects, why they sometimes oppose projects. This is basically from an external stakeholders perspective, that is from the secondary stakeholders in the sense of Cleland and Ireland. We're not looking at it from the perspective of the primary stakeholders or the internal stakeholders, because we assume that they are supportive or should be supportive of the projects which they are involved in which they have some contractual or legal obligation. With secondary stakeholders it's a different matter, because they don't have any contractual or legal obligation, and there are many reasons, many factors, as I pointed out, which can determine their attitude and their behaviors towards projects. Now, what makes project stakeholders supportive? Let us look at those possible reasons why stakeholders support projects. Here, one reason is the acknowledgement of a need. People have needs, communities have needs, localities have needs, countries even have got needs. And stakeholders, they tend to support those projects and programs which meet their needs as well as their wants. Separating needs from wants. Wants are always, much more than needs. Wants can be insatiable. We want. There's no end to it. But needs, they are more restricted, limited in number, for which I would refer you to Maslow's pyramid of needs, which we had looked at in one of the previous classes. Anyway, needs can be current at this point in time, or they can be anticipated for a future point in time. Now, needs can be very versatile, means they can be very different. They can take on many different forms as regards projects are concerned. For example, there could be a need for building additional kindergartens for small pre-primary school children. There could be a need for widening the roads. There could be a need for expanding the power generation infrastructure. There could be a need for creating waste disposal and sewerage treatment facilities, urban regeneration schemes, upgrading hospitals, promotion, health awareness promotion and poverty alleviation projects, and. All these could be needs, which are quite easy to identify. We can see, for example, if there is a need for additional kindergarten, when there are so many small children, toddlers, and we cannot, put them anywhere. There is no place where we can all, sort of bring them together in the kindergarten. The capacity is much smaller than the demand. The supply is much smaller than the demand. So there is a need to build additional kindergartens. The same way, expanding power generation infrastructure and power generation capacity. When our demand is constantly increasing year for year, and we are not adding enough supply capacity to our infrastructure, well, that means that there is a need to do something, a need to increase the production capacity. So needs are really not too difficult to identify in most cases. And when the stakeholders see that their needs are going to be met, whatever need it is, whether it's an economic need or a social need or a security need or an ecological need or an environmental need, whatever, they will tend to support the projects because they are going to benefit from them. Again, as I said, stakeholders are very different. Some stakeholders may benefit from the project more than others, and we're also assuming rational behavior of stakeholders, that they will support projects which are consistent with their needs. Again, you might have some stakeholders who are not very rational in their approach and their behavior. All this also has to be kept in mind. But generally, in most cases, when a project meets stakeholders' need, those stakeholders whose needs are being met will tend to support the project. And the same, of course, applies to wants. We can want all kinds of things, you know. We can want a 5-star luxury hotel, we can want a huge shopping mall, we can want the tallest building in the world, we can want the longest bridge in the world. If this is something we want and the project is going to fulfill that, then as stakeholders, they would tend to support such projects. Employment opportunities. Now, this is another reason why stakeholders would tend to support a project. Many projects, especially in construction, infrastructure development, require substantial input of labor, and labor, you know, can be of different types. It can be skilled labor, can be semi-skilled labor, can even be unskilled labor, and especially in the execution phase of a construction project, which means that there may be a high demand for labor input. Now, this demand has to come from somewhere. And if the stakeholders feel that they are going to benefit from employment opportunities by working on a project, whether it's in a skilled or semi-skilled or unskilled position, then they would tend to support that project. Of course, after the project is over and it goes into operation, there are also employment opportunities. So it's not only during the project phase, but it's also after completion of the project. For example, a hotel. When you are building a new hotel, the construction of the hotel will require labor input, but after the hotel is finished and it goes into operation, then of course one also will need people to look after that hotel, managers and employees and cooks and butlers and receptionists and so forth. So during and after the project, there are employment opportunities, and stakeholders who feel that they can benefit from these opportunities will tend to support the project. And particularly in those places, those communities, those localities where jobs are scarce, and in many places they're very scarce, very high unemployment ratio, sometimes which is way above the national average unemployment rate. And they would tend to be particularly supportive of those projects. If you consider in Pakistan, the unemployment rate, officially it's not too high, but unofficially it's much higher. You always find lots and lots of people looking for jobs, especially in the construction sector. If you drive around Islamabad, for instance, where I live, you will see at many places intersections, long lines of laborers sitting there with their tools, waiting for employment. And this employment, of course, will only come on construction sites, whether it's commercial, residential. So employment opportunities are a big source which makes stakeholders supportive of projects. Business opportunities. Now, besides labor, besides human resources, projects require large inputs of raw materials, finished and semi-finished items, and a host of services which are provided both on and off-site. Again, if you take a typical construction project, you need all kinds of things. You need cement, you need iron, you need bricks, concrete blocks, and all kinds of things over there. You need all kinds of other items which are made of metal. Then you need, of course, windows, you need frames, you need a whole load of items over there, and they have to come from somewhere. And those stakeholders who are providing such items, such inputs for the project, they of course will tend to benefit in terms of sales, in terms of revenue, in terms of income, and they would usually be supportive of such projects. The same way those who are providing services. If you look at a major project site where you have a large number of people working or who have come in from outside, they all need services. For instance, they have to buy stuff, they have to go to the hairdresser, they have to do other things, you know, all kinds of services over there. So these are all business opportunities, and stakeholders in the community in the locality where that project is being undertaken can benefit greatly from such business opportunities. And of course, not only during the project life cycle, but after the project has been finished and it goes into operation, then still there will be opportunities for business interaction there. Investment inflows, again, this is one of these economic and financial reasons why stakeholders are supportive of projects. Some projects may facilitate an increase in the volume of investment which flows into the community after their completion. For example, a project to establish an IT training institute in a small town, maybe one of your towns, may prompt IT businesses to set up offices and facilities there where the manpower needed for their operations can be recruited. That is the example I've just given. If you are setting up a training institute which provides skills in IT, computers, programming languages, networking, all these things, then you have a cadre of trained manpower as a result of this training institute. And when you have these specialists who are available after training, that becomes an incentive for other businesses which are requiring those specialists for their operations to come and set up their projects over there. So it's actually the output of one project over here, that is trained personnel, actually attracts other projects, which they become then the inputs for other projects, and when those projects go into operation. So that is why some projects, they can bring around increase in investment inflows into the community after their completion, so they would be doing a big service for the community, again depending on whose perspective you're looking at it from. Property values and rents, which I have already referred to several times in the course of this course on stakeholder management. Well, there are some projects which may significantly boost the perceived attractiveness of the localities where they are undertaken. And such projects, which significantly boost the perceived attractiveness of the localities, may translate into an increase in property values and rents due to an influx of people and organizations seeking to avail opportunities open to them while projects are ongoing and or after their completion. Say, for example, you have some high-tech industry, or maybe some university or some bank wants to set up shop, or wants to set up an office in your community, set up a new bank branch or set up a new university campus or affiliated campus or some high-tech industry. They want to come into your community. Well, for such organizations, there will be a high demand for employment. People would like to work for them because there are good prospects there, there's a good salary, good promotional prospects maybe, and so forth. So this will all lead to an influx of people who want to move into that area where these institutions have set up their presence. And because of this increased influx of people, there will be also an increased demand for accommodation, whether it's for purchase or for rent. And as you know, law of supply and demand, whenever there is a restricted demand or limited demand, whenever there is a restricted supply or a limited supply, and there is a demand which is increasing and increasing, and the supply cannot keep or cannot cope with that increase in demand, prices tend to go up. In other words, if you want to buy a property there, then the property prices would go up to reflect the increased demand for property. The same way the rents will go up to reflect the increased demand for leasing property. So certain projects, when they are completed, when they go into operation, they can result in an increase in property value. Tourism. I had also pointed out in one of the earlier classes that tourism is a very big business nowadays, one of the pillars of the global economy because of mobility, because of easy travel with airline routes and with opening of borders in many places and so forth. Well, tourists the world over, they like to visit places which offer fun and adventure. You spend your money in your holiday and go in a nice place, adventurous place where you have lots of fun, entertainment, sightseeing opportunities, cultural learning experiences. This is the good thing about tourism. And projects in the tourism industry usually tend to attract a lot of support among many stakeholders because they increase the number of tourists, and tourists of course bring with them money, and money flows into local community, flows into the local locality, into the economy, and that of course has lots of benefits. Of course there are also many stakeholders who are not very keen on the idea of having too many tourists in their locality. They say it erodes maybe the traditions or the cultures or the appearance of the place. Well, that may be, but all in all, tourist-related projects they tend to generate quite a bit of support among project stakeholders. If you look at whole countries, for instance, Thailand, Spain, Turkey to a large extent, they're all quite heavily dependent on tourism. The Maldive Islands, and the people there are very happy when tourists come, mostly because of all the benefits which they also get. And that's why lots and lots of tourist-related projects are being undertaken there, building of hotels, building of resorts, expanding infrastructure, looking after cultural sites, and so forth. Another reason why project stakeholders would tend to support projects is because of the improvement in quality of life. And I had also pointed that out in the previous class when I talked about net gain and net loss. Net gain is considered equivalent with a improvement in the quality of life. Net loss is considered synonymous with a reduction in the quantity of life. Anyway, many projects, they offer their stakeholders an improved quality of life on completion. How does this improved quality of life become manifested? For example, provision of access to a larger and superior range of goods, services, comforts and experiences, and a cleaner, safer, healthier and more enjoyable environment to live in. Now, which projects would be providing access to larger, superior range of goods, services, comforts, experience, etc.? A typical example is shopping malls. Shopping malls is a nice place to go. A lot of people like to hang around in shopping malls, or to go shopping there almost every day, always finding something. Some shopping malls are huge, we can find almost everything under the roof of the shopping mall. Cinemas also, you can go and enjoy, see some nice films over there. Entertainment centers, museums. A lot of people are very fond of visiting museums, myself included. Libraries, art galleries, sports facilities, public and amusement parks, new product development, new service development, Apple, all the nice gadgets which they are making, or Sony Corporation. Urban regeneration, which improves the sort of ambience, which improves the aesthetics of a urban locality. All these are typical examples of projects which improve the quality of life for stakeholders. Again, for some stakeholders more than others. If you don't visit shopping malls, if you don't go to cinemas, if you don't go to museums, you don't go to galleries and libraries, probably your quality of life is not going to be affected by such projects. But most stakeholders, to some extent, they do visit such places, and they like to visit such places, and such projects can bring about improvement in their quality of life. In other words, they will tend to support such projects. Aspirations and pride from the community now to the national level. Well, there are some projects which attract almost universal across-the-board endorsement, simply because the community, or if you look at the macro level, the majority of people who are living in the provinces or states, regions or countries in which such projects are being undertaken or are planned to be undertaken at a future point in time, perceive them as being of overriding importance. Examples I've given over here, the Beijing Olympic Games of 2008, and of course then the recent Olympic Games from last year, Well, if you look at the Beijing Olympic Games, it was a source of great pride for China and for the Chinese people. It was also watched by, I'm told, over 1 billion people across the globe. So most people, almost all people, actually supported this project. Olympic Games is an event, which is a type of a project. So it had a very broad support among the stakeholders, the Chinese and also people outside China who had some interest in the game, whether it was active or whether it was just passive interest. The India-Pakistan arms race. Now the arms race itself is not really a project, but the activities which are taking place under the arms race, development of weapon systems, whether it's missiles, whether it's nuclear weaponry, whether it's conventional weaponry in the sense of planes or tanks or artillery or vehicles, whatever. A lot of projects, and many stakeholders tend to support such projects. Many stakeholders in India support India's weaponization program. Many stakeholders in Pakistan support Pakistan's weaponization program. Okay, over the merits of this arms race one can debate, but that's another issue. And but the thing is that the point I'm trying to make here is that the support is at a very widespread level, at a national level. If you ask people in Pakistan, you go across the whole country and you ask them, do you support development of the nuclear weapon? Probably most of them would say yes. The same way in India, if you go across India, in all the different states, from north to south, east to west of the country, and ask people, they also would say yes, they support India's nuclear weapon program. So even though the people themselves are very different, maybe culturally or ethnically, linguistically, but they all see this as a project of overriding national importance, which they think they should support. Of course, there are also a lot of people in India and Pakistan who don't think so. National aspirations and pride. This is just what I was just saying a moment ago about the Beijing Olympic Games. So I don't want to say anything else about that. And also here the example of India and Pakistan. I've given you some images over here. One is, I think, the firing of the Agni missile by India at the top. The other is the nuclear explosion tests in Pakistan in 1998. So you can just have a look at that. So as you can see now that there are quite a large number of reasons why stakeholders support projects. And I have just gone through some of the main reasons. There are many, many more, of course, but one can go on and on and on, and one will always come across something new. The nice thing about stakeholder management and engagement is that when you're analyzing projects, not only in Pakistan but across the whole world, you will see that while there are a large number of similarities, people here, stakeholders, they might oppose projects for the same reason why stakeholders in Europe or Africa or South America or the US might oppose projects. But there's always, something new. There's always some reason why stakeholders who are specific to a particular locality may support or oppose a particular project. So that is the beauty of stakeholder management and engagement, is that there's always room to discover something new, to find out, to get some new insights, some new knowledge into this subject area. Anyway, we have talked now at why stakeholders support projects, what are the reasons, the factors which make stakeholders supportive of projects. Now we have to look at the other side, is what are the reasons which make stakeholders against projects, adversarial towards projects. What are the major concerns? Concern is always a feeling of apprehension. It's a negative feeling with regards to something. I have a concern with regards to something. I'm worried about something. Well, we have to see now why stakeholders are concerned, and I've also hinted at in previous classes. But let's look at it now in a little bit more detail. Well, one of the main reasons why stakeholders oppose projects, especially these type of projects here like dam building, is the expropriation of property and the compensation regime which is adopted. A major cause of concern for stakeholders the world over, it's in all the places, especially in developing countries in Asia, Africa, South America, is the possibility of forced acquisition of their land and dwellings and eviction from their ancestral villages, townships and cities with consequent involuntary resettlement somewhere else. If you look at the history of dam building, since the Second World War, then you will find out that tens of millions of people all across the world have been displaced as a result. Tens of millions of people is a very large number. It's as big as a medium-sized country. And if you consider all these people have all been taken forcibly from their lands and resettled somewhere else where they may not have wanted to be resettled, and with all the costs which are associated with that, then you can imagine that this is a major cause of concern for stakeholders, especially for those stakeholders who have a very close affinity to the land on which their ancestors may have been living for centuries, maybe even for thousands of years. Stakeholders who live at places for generations tend to develop a strong emotional attachment to these places and community spirit, and may experience severe traumatization when they are compelled to resettle elsewhere. So it's not only the economic cost or the financial cost of moving somewhere, but it's also the psychological cost, the traumatization, when you feel you have been taken away from something which is very precious, very dear to you, and you're sent somewhere else where you may not want to go at all. So that is also a cost which normally is not considered in the costs of such projects if you are talking about resettlement of people. Then of course all kinds of issues associated with compensation and resettlement. Many dams which were built even decades ago, certain people have not been paid their compensation yet. And those who are involuntarily resettled, many times they feel that the compensation which has been given to them is not sufficient. It does not reflect the losses which they have incurred as a result of the project from going ahead. So forced acquisition of property, payment of inadequate compensation, resettlement in an undesired location, all these are very strong concerns which stakeholders have on certain categories of projects such as dam building, to some extent airport building, highway building or gas pipeline building, those projects which require a lot of physical space, a lot of land in order to be completed. Of course, there are also big projects which do not require such things. You know, if you are doing a big event project, or if you're doing some big IT project maybe, and some big development project, then forced eviction, etc., these things may not apply. This just continues on what I just pointed out, lack of consultation and so forth for those who are evicted. If you look at this example over here, China Three Gorges Dam, which is the biggest hydroelectric dam in the world, the number of people evicted, it says here right at the top, you can see over here, and this is already a few years old, you can see it's from 2006, but actually the latest figure is much higher. It's I think around 2 million. More than 1 million people have been resettled. So, and you can see here about 12 cities, 140 towns, 1,300 villages will be submerged. If you already look at the loss of the property over there, I mean, you can't just pick up a city which is in the way of a dam and just put it elsewhere, you know. All these structures will be destroyed. How much cost, how much time, how much energy has gone into making these structures in the first place. So it's a very big cost which is associated over here. Now, another reason why stakeholders may oppose projects is because of the negative impact on property values. I just pointed out some moments ago that there are some projects which can increase property values. On the other hand, there are also projects which may cause a decrease in property values. This is a frequent concern of stakeholders in the context of certain projects. For example, nuclear power station, mines and factories which are causing extensive pollution, which are being undertaken in their proximity. Now again, this might differ from place to place. In Western countries, for instance, this would be definitely the case. If you are having a nuclear power station being built in your neighborhood, it's certainly going to have probably a very negative effect on your property value. People might like to move away from it for the reasons which I pointed out, because the perception that nuclear power stations are dangerous, they're hazardous to health, they can cause higher rates of leukemia and cancer. There's a danger that they may be attacked. There is a danger of some accident taking place with consequent spill out of radioactive material, and so forth and so forth. The same with factories. You know, there have been many cases where factories have blown up, killing large numbers of people. Mines are also can be quite dangerous, can cause lots of pollution and damage to the groundwater table. So all this can result in a reduction in property values in that locality. In other localities, there might not be such a big reduction. In some cases, there might even be an appreciation. Who knows? You know. So there have been some research studies which have been conducted on the impact of property values of projects, and not really conclusive. Some have said that the values go up, some have said that the values go down. So one has to perhaps do some more research. That will take some more time. But this is a factor which is a cause of concern to many stakeholders, how the project is going to affect their property values. And if they perceive that there's going to be a negative impact, then they would be normally opposing the project. And the bigger the expected or the perceived negative impact, then the more they would tend to oppose the project. Sorry. Adverse economic consequences. This could be another reason why stakeholders oppose projects. Stakeholders may oppose some projects because they expect them to have a negative economic or financial impact on themselves and or their community. Some stakeholders may apprehend an increase in the prices of goods and services they require, and increase in the cost of their rent payments. Others may anticipate business losses or be concerned over a possible or definitive threat to their livelihoods. Well, again, this comes on also from some of the projects which I had pointed out earlier, which, for example, result in an influx of people who are coming into a locality because of some other project which has been undertaken over there. Well, if you have more people coming in, that also tends to increase demand for products, demand for services, which can also result in a corresponding increase in prices of goods and services. Now, for some stakeholders, these are very good if the prices of goods and services go up. Those who are doing business, those who are selling, shops, for instance. But then there may be other stakeholders, those who are buying, for which this is not such a good development if the prices of goods and services are going up, if you have to pay more, and if you're not getting any corresponding wage increase, for instance. The same way, rents may go up. Property prices may go up, which is good for property owners, it's good for landlords, but then is it good for those who are looking for accommodation, because then the cost which they have to pay also will go up accordingly. And you know that in some places rents are very high. For example, here in Islamabad, rents are extremely high compared to other places in other cities of Pakistan, or even smaller towns. There's a very big disparity there in the rents. Business losses, it's also possible that in a competitive environment that some businesses they may lose out to their competitors. So it means that competitors would gain more financial strength, more market strength, and they would be losing that. So that would be one reason why they might not be very supportive of that project or projects which are going to be undertaken. Adverse impact on health. Some projects associated in the general public's perception with having adverse health effects, for example, like the nuclear power plants, the chemical factories, the mines, also cell phone towers and wind farms. Now, there has also been some research in this regard about cell phone towers, microwave towers, and how they affect people's health. And actually in some countries, the courts have decided that such towers should not be near schools or other places, where there are large numbers of people residing. The debate is still open on wind farms. There is also some concerns about wind farms and how they can affect the health of the people through the humming sound which they generate. That is still the subject of some debate which is going on. The existence and or extent of such adverse health impacts are a topic of considerable disagreement between stakeholders, and scientific research often is inconclusive and can produce widely varying results. Of course, there are also some research studies where there may be conflicts of interest, where the researchers are trying to actually give a biased opinion in favor of one or on favor of the other point of view. So it's still an area which is there's a lot of uncertainty, and that is why some stakeholders might not trust such studies. They might be skeptical about the project in the absence of some very good scientific research results. Unsightliness and visual obstruction as another reason why stakeholders oppose projects. Some stakeholders oppose projects because they perceive them as unsightly additions which are in disharmony with their natural or urban landscape of their localities, or because they are concerned that the project will result in visual obstruction of their surroundings. And a lot of projects have been getting a lot of opposition from stakeholders because of this. You can imagine, say for example, you have a nice locality with a very nice view of the hills or the ocean, and then right in front of you someone wants to put up an apartment building so that all your view is lost. You can't see, of course, through the apartment building. And this could be one reason why stakeholders are against your project. You can imagine if you have in a city like Paris, very old architecture in the center of the city, and then some modern tower comes up, it will not be really in harmony with the architectural landscape of the city. And that's why a lot of cities now have got actually regulations that the buildings which are constructed in the city limits or on certain localities of the city, they have to be architecturally in harmony with the other older established buildings which are already there, failing which they can encounter not only a lot of opposition from the residents, but also they will unlikely to get permission to undertake their projects. Yeah, distrust of the project purpose, another reason why stakeholders could be adversarial, the element of distrust. Projects occasionally encounter considerable suspicion among stakeholders. This may be fueled by some hostile stakeholders who incite other stakeholders into believing that the project has been conceived or is being undertaken with the concealed intent of causing them harm. For example, here, concerns were voiced in some developing countries that vaccination programs were being pursued to promote infertility. Also in Pakistan, we have heard this story before, that the vaccines, they contain such and such and such chemicals, and if those who get the vaccines, they will not be able to produce so many children, etc., etc. Not only in Pakistan, also in other countries. And of course there has been a lot of debate about that, and there has been scientific studies and chemical analysis of the vaccines, etc., etc. But this element of distrust is there in some cases, and it takes a lot of convincing to do to make people believe that the project is not intending them any harm. Loss of privacy. Now in the information age, privacy has emerged as a major concern of citizens in the information age, with this networking and internet and databases and so forth. Countries across the globe have passed laws to safeguard people's right to privacy, a right which in the post-9/11 world is being increasingly challenged by governments and their intelligence and law enforcement agencies. collecting information on people, pooling all this information in databases, interlinking, internetworking databases, sharing information across institutions, between institutions, such as intelligence agencies. Much critical scrutiny has been directed towards projects such as creation of large databases which may compromise individual privacy. Many years ago, data, was all collected in paper form and file form, and then when it came to the information age, it was much easier to collect data, to store data, to process data. If you were looking for something in the data, then you have search functions, for instance. Nowadays, very fast chips which can process very large amounts of data, not only text data but also visual data, photographs and graphics and videos and so forth. And now it's quite possible that on one individual you can collect from many different sources the data and put them together, and then you have a very detailed profile of that individual or that organization. What is that individual doing? Where is it going? Where is visiting? What is it saying? What is it writing? And so forth. Huge profiles of individuals which can now be compiled. The technology is there, and this technology also has led to concerns across the world, including Pakistan, by the way, about the how to guarantee the safety of such data. Because if data is compromised, it can result in a lot of adverse consequences for people, for organizations, and it can also result in a lot of disadvantages to people who don't really deserve to have them. Moral outrage, another reason why stakeholders might be concerned about projects. Stakeholders may oppose the project because they deem it to be, quote, morally offensive, unquote, or inconsistent with their cherished cultural and societal values. If you look, for example, here in Pakistan, if you want to build a casino, for instance, you probably have a lot of outrage, or want to build some other things, or make a movie, which a lot of people might not like because of certain things which are acted in there or certain things which are said in there. So that could be one reason why stakeholders oppose a project. Moral opposition to projects is, of course, culture specific. What is considered acceptable in one society may not be considered acceptable in another society. Like things which are done in the West may not be quite accepted here in Pakistan, and vice versa also. So the level of opposition may intensify or decrease over time. It depends on many factors, but there are a large number of projects which would fit into this category of moral outrage, where stakeholders would feel morally outraged that such a project is actually taking place in their locality. Another reason why stakeholders oppose projects is pollution. Pollution is a big issue, as we all know, and we've seen it all with our own eyes many, many times. For countless projects across our globe, the common concern is pollution. And pollution comes in many different forms. There is atmospheric pollution or air pollution. There is land or soil pollution. There is water pollution. And there is also acoustic pollution. Acoustic is sound related. If you are exposed to loud sound all the time, that is very damaging for you. That is also a form of pollution. I consider it a form of pollution, at least. And all these pollutions, individually or collectively, they can severely affect the health of individuals and communities over time with a lot of cost, health costs, psychological costs, psychiatric costs. And there is also the element of visual degradation of pristine environments, natural, beautiful environments, where you see nice lakes, for instance, have all been completely polluted because of a project. They're all full of chemicals, or they're full of litter, and we have seen it many times here. Or you see the land, a very nice patch of land, and then you are passing a place where, for example, all the debris from a project site has been dumped. So this could be a cause of concern for stakeholders, and rightly so, because of the high costs which are associated with pollution. Damage to ecological systems, fauna, flora, that's the plants, the trees, the animals, birds, marine life, insects, and all over. Many stakeholders are very conscious of the ecology. Lots of organizations are there now to protect the ecology, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, and who are very powerful, who are very active, and who have a lot of experience also in fighting against projects, many times with a great degree of success. Some very large projects have been derailed, had to be prematurely terminated because of environmental activism. Traffic headache. Now, this would apply a lot to construction projects, for example. During the execution phase especially, construction projects may cause considerable traffic obstruction, congestion, and diversion, which may increase the risk of vehicle accidents, consequent damage, injury, or death. Business activity in the affected zone may also be severely disrupted for some time. If you're building a new bridge or a flyover, and the whole area has to be closed, and the people who are driving, they have to take side roads. You can imagine the side roads have their limited capacity, and they will be clogged. The people who are living there will be affected negatively. Commuters will take longer time to commute. Longer time means, of course, higher cost, less time for work possibly. And the businesses who are there, they will suffer because, people who want to come and buy and shop there cannot come so easily. They have to make maybe a long detour. So it's not so easy than if you were to just go there directly. So a lot of people might be deterred from coming to do business. All this can happen. Stakeholders tend to dislike the inconvenience, excitement, and stress which ensues over time by having a construction site in proximity. And we all have perhaps seen it. Here in Islamabad we have lots of construction going on, big commercial construction going on, roads. There was a time a couple of years ago when it was really difficult to drive here because so many roads were under widening, trying to widen the roads. I think they have become too wide now in many cases, and that has all caused a lot of issues, like some of the issues which I have indicated over here. Damage to archaeological and historical assets. Well, there are some projects, again larger construction type, civil engineering type projects, which can cause damage to such assets, especially dams, because they take up a lot of physical space. Roads also take over a lot of space in length. And there are a lot of archaeological historical sites in many countries, Asia, Europe, all very old culture, going thousands of years back. And more often than not, one always comes across some archaeological site. Actually, many archaeological historical sites have been discovered as a result of such projects. When the digging was going on and some ancient artifacts were unearthed, or some ancient foundations were unearthed, they were first unearthed through some projects. No one knew that these archaeological historical sites were there. And because archaeology, because history is considered very important, rightly so, I think, there are many stakeholders who will oppose projects which cause damage to historical and archaeological sites and assets. Cultural and religious xenophobia. This is another reason why stakeholders oppose projects, because the project owners, they are either foreigners or hail from an ethnic or religious minority and are hence perceived as culturally alien. So this is this element of bias towards others who are different than yourself. It can be also by a small group towards a larger group. Projects by multinational corporations in some developing countries, for example, have caused concern that local cultural values, norms, and traditions may be undermined. And minorities often find it extraordinarily hard to set up their own schools or places of worship, particularly in this part of the world. If you want to set up, for minorities, for non-Muslims, certain, institutions, they will find it very difficult. I've heard of many cases like that. With regards to the multinational corporations in some developing countries, if you look at India, for instance, there was a lot of criticism of multinational corporations and why they are coming in and why they are setting up factories and why they are setting up shops and that they are going to erode the local culture, blah, 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 and so forth. One may agree or may not agree with it, but the fact is that there is this element of opposition because of the affiliation or because of the nationality of those who are doing the project or who want to do the project. So this element of cultural and religious xenophobia is also one reason why stakeholders tend to oppose projects. Another reason why stakeholders may oppose a project is because they are skeptical about its need. Is there really a need for a project? Is there a genuine need? Stakeholders may think that the intended outcomes are either they are not achievable, realizable, or worthwhile, and the projects are a waste of resources which could be utilized productively on other needed projects, or that they are based on a contrived need and are actually designed to benefit the project owners at their expense. If you look at some of the projects which are even being undertaken in Pakistan, some of the so-called development projects, which are actually basically only being done in order to suit certain political interests, wherever affiliation these interests may be. This would be one example of a contrived need, where there is no real need, but because certain politicians want to get votes, they want to get support, and they think they can get this support by doing some project there, even if there is no real need for it, they are doing this project. So this could be one reason why stakeholders oppose a project, because they are skeptical whether the project is really needed, whether there are not some ulterior motives or interests behind the project. Lack of consultation, that is a very big issue for stakeholders on projects. Many projects are being undertaken around the world without adequately identifying and analyzing the stakeholder community and engaging them with respect to their project-specific concerns. In other words, you set up a mine, you just go there, you set up your mine, you don't bother about the people who are living in the proximity, you don't want to know about them. They're living there, let them live, you are there to do your project. This is very bad example of project management, a very bad way to do things. Whenever you are doing a project in the locality, you must always consult with your local stakeholders, get their input, get their feedback, find out what are their concerns, what are their interests, and then try to engage them accordingly. Actually, some stakeholders, they may resent not having been adequately informed and or consulted and engaged by the project owners or implementers, and hence may not support the projects in question to the extent that they may have otherwise done. In other words, you know, some stakeholders, they may not be against your project, they may actually be in favor of your project, but because they have not been consulted, they are offended. And because they are offended, they decide that, well, okay, we are not going to support the project as much as we intended to support it, or we might actually oppose the project just because they didn't consult us. So, and this is one lesson which is now considered a good practice in project management and in stakeholder management. Always consult with the projects, with your stakeholders when you're doing your projects. The World Bank, many other organizations who have written case studies, who have written publications on project management and projects and development projects, they always recommend that consultation must be done with your local stakeholders. Application of strong-arm tactics. This is another reason why stakeholders may oppose projects, and this happens quite often, by the way. Often we read about it in the media, heavy-handed, brutal methods used by project owners and implementers to get project work done. For example, harassment and intimidation of adversarial stakeholders, and has been witnessed and documented in several projects across the globe, can extend to include serious and targeted acts of violence such as abduction and murder. In other words, those who are doing the project, they have got certain people working for them whose job is to actually go and harass, intimidate, and even brutalize stakeholders who are opposing the project. Sort of threaten them, beating them up, abusing them, these sorts of things. And when this comes out in the media, of course, then it gives a very bad impression of the project, that they are resorting to such methods. And even those stakeholders who might have been favorably disposed towards the project, they might decide to oppose it just for this reason. So, besides the fact that it is illegal and totally unethical, this is one of the worst ways to manage a project or to engage your stakeholders. Apprehension over crime. I had pointed out that some of the large projects which are being undertaken might require influx of project employees from outside the locality if these cannot be found within the locality. And this can result in tensions between these project employees from outside the locality and the community of the project locality. There might also be other issues, like crime which is being committed by outsiders. And also the project may attract criminals after completion. If you think about, let's say, a bank which is being built, well, it's quite possible that after that bank has been built, criminals will come in. They'll be thinking about, how can we rob that bank, Or if there is other thing, if there's a big business coming in, you might have other kinds of organized criminals coming in, organized crime. That is also a distinct possibility. And that could be a cause of concern then to some stakeholders who are thinking ahead and what could happen then. Conduct of the project owners. Many stakeholders, they might oppose projects because of the undesirable reputation, policies and practices of the organizations who are owning the projects or who are undertaking them. I pointed out earlier, especially in mining field, the mining industry does not have a very good reputation, especially as far as stakeholder management and engagement is concerned, also some energy companies. Also, we have to keep in mind that environmental and human rights standards are not universal. Different places, different countries have got different standards. What's considered unacceptable in one country might not be considered unacceptable in another. It might be considered okay, maybe undesirable, but not unacceptable. So then, of course, there's also the issue of corruption in developing countries, especially all over the world, but especially in developing countries, and taking kickbacks and taking bribes. These sorts of things. So, and some organizations, they are quite known for that, for giving bribes and kickbacks, and this can result in a very negative image, which in turn translates into stakeholder opposition because of this bad image. Negative publicity. There are some projects which are deemed controversial, and they get a lot of negative publicity. Also, some stakeholders might not like to have a project in one locality because that locality's reputation among other localities might go down. Why have you allowed this project to take place in your locality? No other locality wants it. Why are you allowing it? So that also could be a reason why stakeholders, they want to steer away from controversy, and they don't want to support such projects which they think can tarnish their reputation. Negative attitude to change. I had pointed out earlier also in the last class that change is quite difficult normally because you have to sacrifice certain benefits for certain benefits you have to give up, and you get back some uncertain benefits in the future. And people are a little bit hesitant about that. What goes hand in hand with change, and that is projects. Stakeholders can't always foresee what the impact or the consequences of change is going to be, the multidimensional ramifications of the change. And that's why they may be hesitant to support the project. And they also might not like the change. If you are living in a place, for instance, and there is a desire to, say, get rid of old facilities and build up some new ones, some stakeholders might not like that. They say, we are perfectly happy with the facilities we had. Now, why are they taking them away and putting up new ones? We might not be able to cope well with the new facilities. There is this possibilities also there. So change, it can be multidimensional, difficult to predict sometimes, and that's why stakeholders might oppose them on that grounds, because they don't really know what the change will look like, whether it's going to bring them big benefits or not. Fear of terrorism, 9/11, terrible events which took place there. That has made security now a top priority for many countries around the world. And we've also seen the effects of terrorism in Pakistan these last several years. Some stakeholders are concerned at the possibility of terrorist attacks on nuclear power stations, chemical weapon factories, and other facilities, which may result in considerable loss of life and damage to property, and are hence reluctant to support such projects in their localities. If you feel that your locality is going to be attacked or is going to be heavily damaged as a result of a project which is going to take place, then you are probably not going to support that project. That would not be rational. That would not be a reasonable thing to do, would it? That's why a lot of projects have encountered a lot of opposition because of this. Civil strife situations, civil strife it's all over as well. It's in many countries of the world. Conflicts between countries, conflicts within countries, conflicts between regions of countries. In countries which are facing local insurrections, for example, Iraq, Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Philippines, just to name some of them, many projects and the staff employed to work on such projects have been deliberately targeted for attacks by insurgents who perceive these projects as representing the interests of the state. Like the Maoists in India, for instance, they have attacked many project sites. In the same way in Pakistan, project sites, for example, run by Chinese, they have been attacked by insurgents over here in this country. So these are also stakeholders who are opposing such projects because these projects conflict with their objectives and their aims. And their aim, of course, is to create havoc, is to create problems, is to attack the state, spread terrorism and panic. And by attacking such projects, they think they are helping achieve their objectives. And they are opposing such projects. Well, that was it. You can see here that there are a very large number of reasons why stakeholders oppose projects. I have gone through some of the main reasons which I have found out according to my research on the subject, which of course is also still evolving. New ideas are constantly being generated and developed. But now you can have an idea why you have one group of stakeholders which is in favor of your project, and you have another group which may be against your project. And that again shows you how stakeholders are heterogeneous and how you have to look at stakeholders individually and not as a collective entity. You have to look at the stakeholders individually, you have to analyze them individually, and on that basis then you have to manage and engage them. You cannot have one strategy for dealing with all your stakeholders. You have to have multiple strategies, and in order to develop these multiple strategies, you first really have to thoroughly analyze and understand your stakeholders. What motivates them? What drives them? What are their apprehensions? What are their expectations? What are their concerns? When you have understood all these, then you are in a good position to come up with a very good set of engagement strategies. That's it for this class. What we are going to do in the next class is we're going to look at a case study of the Chad-Cameroon pipeline project, which was one of the largest infrastructure projects which have been conducted in sub-Saharan Africa. And I'll be bringing along in the next class a few videos, and we will look at these videos which have been made about the pipeline project from different stakeholder perspectives, and then we will review it at the end, so I can also get you thinking a little bit on such projects. Anyway, that's it for today, and thank you very much for bearing with me. And I will see you in the next lesson, which is lesson number 21, where we will see some very interesting videos. Thank you. Bye.